Hi guys, welcome to another session of news in 30 minutes. As you can see, you don't see my image, you're just seeing the screen. It is not a technical glitch. Let me just make it clear that I will be traveling for the next 1 month and I'll be in Delhi. So using a camera and then editing it and putting it in the video is a little difficult. However, what I will assure you is I will not miss on any day's current affairs. Okay, this I'll definitely assure of. I'll not miss on any day's current affairs. But for the next 1 month, when I'm there in Delhi, more or less you'll not be able to see my face in the video. However, I'll be able to use the same presentation to explain you important news on that particular day. Okay, so you don't have to fear about the consistency of the initiative. The initiative is going to run. The only changes for the next 1 month in Delhi, I'll not be able to use the camera and edit stuff because I'll be traveling. So I'll be using the presentation to explain you the concepts, except you'll not be able to see my face. So that is one change that I'll be doing only for 1 month until I'm there in Delhi. Once I'm back in Bangalore, I'll be again continuing with the same way of presenting the information. Okay, so this is about the update. The next is today is 1st of November 2023. That is I would like to wish ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಕನ್ನಡ ರಾಜ್ಯೋತ್ಸವದ ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು. And let's get on with the day's important issue. The first issue of today is stock taking climate finance, a case of circles in red ink. Okay, now basically this article is talking about the climate finance and how poor the climate finance has been under Paris agreement. So that is what is the essence of this particular article. Now COP28, okay, COP28 is going to start in UAE. Okay, and it is going to start in the month of November. It is going to run from November to December of 2023. So whenever COP happens, COP is the conference of parties that happens under UNFCCC. Okay, United Nations Framework on Convention for Climate Change. So under this, the COP28 is going to happen for 2023 under the presidency of UAE. Okay, now whenever a COP happens, you should always know that the questions always come on this particular events that have taken place in the conference of parties. Okay, so any reports, any events, any initiatives that are launched in these conferences are very, very important from both prelims as well as mains perspective. So please make sure that you have an eye on that. Okay, now let me just give you a glimpse. So COP28, as I told you, is happening at UAE. Okay, so this is to discuss about the update on Paris agreement. Okay, so before I discuss what COP28 will do, you should have a brief idea about what this Paris agreement is. Okay, so basically what is Paris agreement? Paris agreement was signed in COP21 and it was in 2015. Okay, it was done in 2015. The next is the Paris agreement was basically to limit the global temperatures to only 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2100. So this is the target. By 2100, we have to limit the increase of global temperatures by only 1.5 degrees. That is the goal. Paris Agreement is a voluntary declaration. It is a voluntary declaration for every nation. Okay, so every nation will voluntarily declare how much of mitigation efforts that it wants to take up to fight climate change. Okay, and how much is that mitigation efforts is decided by nationally determined contributions. Okay, nationally determined contributions. These are known as NDCs. Okay, so every nation, including India, will voluntarily declare what is its mitigation efforts that it will do to fight climate change, and that mitigation efforts is given in the form of nationally determined contributions. So this is declared by every nation under the Paris Agreement. Now understand that this nationally determined contributions will always give a blueprint of the nation's efforts, nation's mitigation efforts for the next 5 years. This is what is the Paris Agreement. Okay, so I hope you got the glimpse of what Paris Agreement is. Okay, Paris Agreement is an agreement that is basically there to limit the global temperatures, the rise in the global temperatures to 1.5 degrees by 2100. Next, the declaration here is voluntary. Every nation has to declare its mitigation efforts in the form of nationally determined contributions, which depicts the efforts that are done for the period of 5 years. Okay, so this is what is Paris Agreement. Now, as I told you, COP28 is going to take place in UAE, and this is going to deal with two things. Okay, the one is it will talk about global goal on adaptation. Okay, and another is global stocktake. Global stocktake. Okay, TAKE. Global stocktake. Okay, so basically see, up to Paris Agreement or up to COP27, the main goal of the countries was mitigation efforts. But then adaptation also became very, very important, because you cannot mitigate the effects of climate change completely. Some consequence of climate change has already started to take place, and because it has already started to take place, you have to also focus on adaptation. Hence, this global goal on adaptation is mainly countries coming together to create a framework on how to adapt to the changing effects of climate change. So, to the changing effects of climate. Okay. Now, what is global stocktake? Okay, what is global stocktake? Basically, global stocktake is like a progress report. Okay, it is like a progress report, or you can also say it is like an accountability exercise. Okay, so what is global stocktake? It is nothing but checking how well have the countries performed. How well have the countries performed on their nationally determined contributions. As I told you, nationally determined contributions are voluntary. However, this global stocktake is nothing but you are going to check how these countries have performed in their voluntary contributions. So that is why I told you it is like a progress report. Since NDCs happen 5 years once, or since NDCs give a blueprint of what countries' effort will be in mitigating climate change for the next 5 years, obviously the global stocktake will also be once in 5 years. In order to assess this, since NDCs are giving a blueprint of 5 years, after 5 years the global stocktake will be done to check what is the progress of these NDCs of every country. So in that way we can know how much progress have we made and how much gap is to be filled in limiting the temperature to 1.5 degree rise by 2100. Okay, so basically this is what is global stocktake. Why am I taking this? Is global stocktake is going to happen for the first time since Paris Agreement. Since the Paris Agreement, for the first time global stocktake is going to happen in COP28. That is why this is very important. Okay, so this is about the global stocktake, how it is going to happen in COP28. Okay, another information about COP28 that you should know is there is also going to be something called climate change synthesis report. Okay, this is going to be there in the COP28. So this climate change synthesis report of 2023 is released by IPCC. And what is the job of this? The job of this is basically to provide scientific input to global stocktake that is going to happen in COP28. So the scientific input that is necessary in order to make sure that the progress is maintained as well as the gaps are filled. So this scientific input is going to come from this report called climate change synthesis report. Okay. Now this report also has given two important stats that are very, very important that you should know. The first stat it says is it gives the responsibility completely on humans. It puts the onus completely on humans and tells humans are responsible for all global eating done in the last 200 years. All global eating done in the last 200 years, the entity that is responsible, or the target that is responsible for this global eating in the last 200 years is humans. And it says because of the last 200 years of global eating, it has already resulted in 1.1 degree rise in temperatures compared to pre-industry levels. Okay, so it has very clearly told who is the culprit, and it has told what is the consequence, and it is now telling who holds the responsibility to make sure that we mitigate these effects of global warming. Okay, so I hope you got this information. One more information that this report says is, it says 1.5 degrees centigrade limiting the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees is possible or is achievable by 2100. So that is one thing what this particular article tells. Okay, however, now let me come back to what the climate finance is about. Okay, let me give you a glimpse of what is exactly the climate finance and how things work here. See, in Paris Agreement, it is mandatory. It is mandatory on the part of developed nations. It is mandatory on the part of developed nations to provide funds for developing nations. Okay, why do they need to provide funds? Because it is based on common but differentiated responsibilities. Since the developed nations contributed to global emissions of greenhouse gases, it is their onus or responsibility to give the developing nations funds so that these developing nations can develop technology as well as resilience towards climate change. That is one thing. So what you should understand here is the climate finance aspect of developed nation is mandatory. And this is also declared according to Article 9 of Paris Agreement. Okay, so one, it is mandatory. The second is it is also declared in Article 9 of the Paris Agreement. Now, what is the goal? The goal was to fund $100 billion per year up to 2025. So this is one thing that is given in the climate finance. So after 2025, what to do? There is something called a new collective quantified goal. New collective quantified goal. Okay, so this new collective quantified goal, that is NCQG, new collective quantified goal, it will create a floor of 100 billion. Okay, and from here we will set what is to be the mobilization from 100 billion up to what extent is it required for the developing nations to be mobilizing. I mean, let me just give you I didn't come out properly. Let me just reiterate this. Okay, the first point that I'm telling is, one, the developed nations, it is mandatory to mobilize funds for developing nations. The second is, how much should they fund? The second is $100 billion every year up to 2025. Now after 2025, how much should they mobilize? That is decided on something called new collective quantified goal. Okay, this new collective quantified goal will decide how much the developed nations should mobilize post 2025. Okay, and how much should they mobilize? Should start from the floor rate of 100 billion. That is, 100 billion should be the floor rate. What does it mean? It means from 2026, developed nations cannot tell that they will contribute less than $100 billion. It should always be greater than $100 billion. That is what it means. So from 2026, this new collective quantified goal will start. Okay, so this is the overall aspect of climate finance. Okay, now let me just erase these things so that I have to add some extra information. So the next aspect that you should know is the current scenario with regards to climate finance. So you understood what exactly is happening with respect to climate finance here. Okay, now unfortunately what has happened is, if you take the status of climate finance, okay, if I give you the example of 26th UNFCCC 2021, okay, the developed nations were able to mobilize only $79.6 billion. And look, you may seem that 79 is very close to 100, but that is not the case. The scenario is they were able to only mobilize this much in the entire period up to 2023 that we are there today. Okay, so but what was the goal? The goal was to give 100 billion per year till 2025. Okay, this has never happened. We are so far from the goal because this is the total sum. It is not the annual sum, it is the total sum. Okay, so the target is very far compared to what the developed nations are doing to the developing nations. Okay, so this is the current status. And one more information that I have to give you here is there is a concept called transition risk. There is a concept called transition risk. Now India has made it widely evident to make sure that the transition should be just transition. These are all keywords. Okay, just a transition. Okay, let me tell you what this means. Just a transition means what India tells is at COP27 it has told this. COP27 is 2022. Okay, at COP27 India has told that 3.6 million people in 159 districts, 3.6 million people in 159 districts are involved in fossil fuel economy. Okay, so this 3.6 million people who are involved in fossil fuel economy, if we transit towards renewable energy, what will happen to their livelihoods? Okay, this is known as transition risk. I hope you got this. So transition risk is a risk that is there when you're transitioning from high fossil based energy, high emission intensive fossil energy towards low emission renewable energy. Okay, so when you transition from high to low emission intensity, now there are a lot of people who are dependent on this high emission intensive economy. Okay, now what will happen to these people? That is what you call as transition risk. Okay, so India, that's why I was told the transition has to be just. The transition should make sure that the sustainable livelihoods are given to this 3.6 million people. Okay, this is a concept called transition risk. Okay, so one, you understood what is the climate finance. Okay, you also understood the status of climate finance, which is very abysmally low. And the next is, even within the climate finance, we have to focus on transition risk. Now transition, to make it just a transition, climate finance becomes even more important. That's what the point is. To make the transition fair and just, climate finance becomes even more important. Okay, now this is about the entire climate finance. Now to just give you a few more information about the funding aspect of this thing. Let me just take this off. So if I take the funding, as I told you, Paris Agreement says that $100 billion has to be mobilized by the nations every year. Which nations? Developed nations. Okay, and this $100 billion that is mobilized has to be put in a fund called Global Climate Fund, that is known as GCF. Okay, so basically GCF is a fund that gives or administers the fund, or it provides funds to developing countries. It provides funds to developing countries to reduce transition risk and also to develop climate resilient development. Okay, so basically this is the job of GCF. So where will the fund come from? It will come from developed nations. Okay, now one more thing from prelims perspective you should know is GCF also accepts voluntary contributions. Okay, so these voluntary contributions can come from any environmental NGOs, or it can come even from developing nations themselves. Okay, even they can do, or NGOs can also donate. However, why is this GCF created? This GCF was created in the Paris Agreement itself, and it was created as a means to mobilize $100 billion per year, which will be deposited in the Green Climate Fund. Okay, now when I'm talking about this, I will give you another fund called, there is one more fund called Green Environmental Fund. Okay, GEF. This was created post Rio Earth Summit. Okay, this was created in 1992. Okay, and this is also UNFCCC designated fund. Okay, this is not under World Bank anymore. It is a independent institute. Okay, it is not under World Bank. It is an independent institute. Okay, and here the funds of GEF are replenished. It is replenished every 4 years. Okay, it is replenished every 4 years. Okay, and the last is, it is going to fund these programs which I am going to tell you. One is CBD, okay, Convention on Biological Diversity. The second is Stockholm Convention. Stockholm Convention is basically to do with persisting organic pollutants. Okay, the third is Minamata Convention. Minamata Convention is to do with mercury pollution. The fourth is Montreal Protocol. Montreal Protocol is to do with ozone depleting substances. And the fifth is UNFCCC itself. And the sixth is UNCCD, that is Convention on Combating Desertification. United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification. So this is the difference between GEF and GCF. Okay, so GCF is basically to mobilize the funds from the developed nations. Okay, it is mainly to mobilize funds from developed nations. However, voluntary contributions are also allowed. And this GCF is different from GEF. This is what you should know. GCF was created in 2015 under Paris Agreement. Okay, so I've told you very elaboratively what exactly is Paris Agreement, what is the global stock take, the concept of global stock take, and also I have explained you few concepts like climate change synthesis report and what it is talking about, and what is the climate finance scenario that is there within the Paris Agreement, as well as what is the status of this. Okay, so the final conclusion what I want to tell is this COP28 that is going to happen in the month of November and December. Have a keen eye on the COP28 in the newspapers. Whatever new report, new initiatives that get launched in this particular conference of parties becomes very important, because that can be directly asked in the exam itself. Okay, so this is one of the broader issues of today that you should know. That's why I've done it elaboratively. The rest of the issues are very small and we can finish it faster. Okay, the next issue is why the Goa government is in the dock over notifying a tiger reserve. Okay, so basically they are talking about this tiger reserve, that is Ade Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, so the Bombay High Court has directed the Goa government to declare this as a tiger reserve. Okay, now why some political news are happening, all those things are not required from UPSC preparation angle. What is important is, here there is a complex. That complex is very important. The name of the complex is Koti Gao Made Forest Complex. Okay, Kotigao Made Forest Complex. This Kotigao Made Forest Complex constitutes 5 protected areas. It constitutes 5 protected areas. One is Made Wildlife Sanctuary. Made Wildlife Sanctuary. Okay, so this is what is the thing in news, that is they want to declare this as tiger reserve. Okay, however, the second is the Bhagavan Mahavir National Park and Wildlife Sanctuary. The third is Mollem, Mollem National Park. The fourth is Netravali Wildlife Sanctuary. The fifth is Kotigau Wildlife Sanctuary. Alright, so this 5 protected areas together is known as Kotigau Made Forest Complex. See, there are more than 500 wildlife sanctuaries. So you cannot by heart all the 500 wildlife sanctuaries. But what is important is you have to know all those wildlife sanctuaries that are there in news. This becomes very important. Okay. And what about the national parks? You have to, under any circumstances, by heart or memorize all the national parks of India. That is a must. Okay, so this is about this article. The article mainly talks about what politically is happening, why they are not declaring it as a tiger reserve. But overall, what you have to take from the article is these protected areas that are in use, and these protected areas together will constitute Kotigau Made Forest Complex. So in prelims, what they can ask is, they can just ask you which of the following will come within the Kotigau Made Forest Complex. So you should have an idea about it. Or they can just ask Netravali Wildlife Sanctuary, which state does it come under? So you should have a very good idea about this. Okay. So this is about this article. So basically, before moving on to the next one, you should also know Wildlife Protection Act very well. Okay, so what is the procedure for declaring national park? What is the procedure for declaring wildlife sanctuary? What is community reserve, and how is it different from conservation reserve? So like that, you have to talk what is tiger reserve. All right, what is the functions of National Tiger Conservation Authority? So you should understand this Wildlife Protection Act very much in detail, especially the Amendment Act also that has been done. All right, because one question in prelims always comes on Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, so please have a good clarity on that. Okay, the next issue, again a very short issue, but it can be important from prelims perspective. India bans export of some rice varieties. How this has impacted prices globally and in the country. Okay, so basically India is a rice dependent India is a rice dependent country, definitely. Okay, because rice is a staple food in almost all across India. And we also know that rice is a water intensive crop. It is a water intensive crop. Okay, and you can also know that India is the largest exporter of rice in the world. Okay, according to United States Department of Agriculture, India exports 40% of total rice in the world. Okay, out of the total exports, 40% of the total rice exports comes from India. Okay, this is given by the US Department on Agriculture. Okay, so this is one statistics that you should know, that India is the largest exporter of rice and it exports almost 40%. Okay, and it is a rice dependent country, and it is a water intensive crop. Okay, now just one information from prelims angle that I would like to give is India exports two types of rice. Okay, one is basmati rice, another is non-basmati rice. Okay, now non-basmati rice are of 6 varieties. Okay, one is rice in husk in seed quality. Rice in husk in seed quality. The second is other rice in husk. Third is brown rice. Fourth is rice parboiled. Fifth is non-basmati white rice. And the sixth is broken rice. Okay, so this is the 6 varieties of non-basmati rice. Among the 6 varieties, the most famous is non-basmati white rice. Okay, so one more information that you should know is basmati rice mainly is exported to West Asian nations, or the destination is basically West Asia. Okay, now in West Asia, the largest destination is, the first is Iran. This is first. The second is Saudi Arabia. Okay. Third is Iraq. This is where the basmati rice goes. Okay. If you take the non-basmati white rice, it basically goes to Africa. Africa is the largest destination. So amongst them, the first is Benin. The second is Madagascar. The third is Kenya. Okay. So Africa is the greatest destination. So when India will ban export, that means that these nations will obviously get affected to their rice supply and the rice prices. So that is what this article talks mainly about. But overall, the reason why they are banning exports was because of the monsoon uncertainty. Okay, and how this monsoon uncertainty will result in reducing monsoon uncertainty will result in reducing food productivity. So if we keep exporting, then we will not have for domestic consumption. So as a basis of that, they have banned the rice exports. However, the important is what India's stance or status is regarding rice. Okay, so I hope it was helpful from Prelims perspective, especially this article. So these are some of the important issues of the day, and I hope you will get used to such type of presentation for at least the next 1 month. Okay, if you have any type of suggestions, please leave that in the comment section. Okay, so I hope you liked the session. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, share and subscribe if you feel that these videos are helping you even a tiny bit in your UPSC preparation. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Thank you. Bye.